Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everybody. First, I have to apologize for not being present yesterday. I had to work, and then we had official guests and so on and so forth. And it's a pity that I missed both keynote speeches and also Sasha's book launch. I hope it went all well. So what I'm doing is I actually, this is in my work, I draw on Ilyenkov overall to address a number of contemporary discussions from relation between mathematics and physical sciences, let's say, to the discussions about, like post-workers approaches to knowledge, cognitive capital, so on and so forth. So this presentation here as well, this report is a part of that project, I would say. I have the paper there, so I'm just going to very schematically lay out what I'm trying to do. All right. I hope I wouldn't use a lot of time. So basically, it is something like this, that I assume that prior to the emergence of specifically human language, thinking is identical with bodily activity. And this is the situation, for instance, Vygotsky refers to on this when saying that the child thinks with her sense organs while the adult perceives with her mind, so to say. With the emergence of language, thinking as a reaction to stimuli becomes a type of independent action. This is so because language is a tool, albeit a very effective one, and like other tools, it facilitates abstraction. With the independence of thought from immediate environment to which it was formerly was a reaction, human behavior becomes a delayed response, I would say. With the development of language, concepts as carriers of meaning emerge. Then the conceptualization of language, with the conceptualized language and with the advent of concepts, other form of science systems and conceptual tools are also formed. Of course, these are like, I'm not talking about some sort of causal relation, but these are like different moments of the production of these, like conceptual systems, let's say. Examples are like mathematics, different sciences, and so on. So conceptual tools then appear as specific tools of knowledge production. They can be viewed from two sides. From the one side, as carriers of meaning or knowledge, they are means of production of knowledge. Distribution of knowledge is part of this production process that is facilitated by concept, just as, let's say, transportation is a part of production of, say, value under capitalism. And they can see from the other side, seen from the other side, concepts are appendages or extensions of human psychophysical unity, like human beings. They're new cognitive organs that facilitate the unfolding of the phenomena and accessing the essence. I touched upon this aspect actually in a former article, 2013. Speech, it should be keep in mind that speech production and knowledge production in particular are social, meaning that outside of social realities, they're devoid of any significance. The sociality of language and knowledge production means that these activities are realizable only within historically specific social forms. With the advent of capitalism, and due to capitalist insatiable hunger for valorization, machines emerge as revolutionary means of production, meaning that they're revolutionary not because they are complex tools, as Marx refers to, yes, but in being means of extraction of surplus value from labor. Machines are the means of production of commodities. In the sphere of knowledge production, we encounter a new type of machines, which I call conceptual or ideal machines. Conceptual machines are means of production of knowledge commodity in large masses, hence the gigantic production of knowledge under capitalism, the phenomenon that we face. Similar to tools of so-called material production, the means of knowledge production, that is, conceptual machines, are subject to the bourgeois regime of property. The private appropriation of conceptual machines is facilitated by their ideality. As ideals, they exist independently from the individuals, albeit only in the social universe, which always have a specific form. Conceptual machines, looked at from the side of owners of these means, appear and are knowledge and also generative of new knowledge, just as the appearance of capital as the source of productivity in the eyes of the capitalist, or the fetishist view of machine as being capable of producing new value. We should note that conceptual machines are knowledge to the extent that they are embodiment of past knowledge or dead knowledge, just as machines are embodiment of past dead labor. Looked at from the side of the knowledge producers or scientific laborers, they have to be deployed by living knowledge if they're going to be of any use. This is so because knowledge as a capability to act is in fact inseparable from the knowing subject, just as labor power as the potential to labor is in reality inseparable from the laborer who sells it as a commodity as if it is a thing in and by itself. Thus comes the question, what is that which is accumulated when knowledge commodity is produced and accumulated? Again, this can be answered in analogy to the problem of accumulation of capital. Although capital may acquire a specific form, say money, yet it is not money. Money is capital, but capital is not simply money. That's what I mean. What is being accumulated is capital as a social relation, the core of which is the separation of immediate producers from means of production, which facilitates the mediation of these social relations by a specific means or a specific form like money. Money is just a form of manifestation of capital relation. The same holds in case of accumulated knowledge. The aforementioned appearance of knowledge as a commodity or entity by itself that facilitates its accumulation in specific forms, for instance, in forms of data or journal articles, so on and so forth, is the manifestation of the separation of immediate knowledge producers from the means of knowledge production. Thus follows the capitalization of knowledge production process and the consequent subsumption of scientific academic labor under capital and the production of knowledge as a commodity with the use of conceptual machines. So that's it. This is the core of what I was trying to say in the article I sent you. That's it, and thank you very much.
Thanks. Any comments in the room? Karina, to start? I fixed the microphone to make it much better now.
There are people online as well. They want to ask a question, I think, or comment.
I'm going to get on it. You mean it's going to work for you? Okay. Siyaves, amazing. I just have a problem with the word tool in terms of language as a tool. I think that's it needs to be teased out and elaborated a bit more, because it's a tool in some respects, but it's also, and I don't think it's simply an appendage of human cognition that we find it. I think the development of language, which is inseparable from thought and writing, of course, has its own development separately from these other aspects of the capitalist machine and so on, capitalist production. It has its own development. This is what Hegel was talking about in the science of what Lenin picked up, these laws of development of thought. And I don't think we can just sort of conflate it. And I thought there's too much conflation in this notion of concept as a machine. Concept is in some respects a machine, but it's a totally dialectical thing. And if we look at it from the Ilyenkovian dialectical standpoint, because it isn't only what is, it is what is produced under the system. We do put knowledge under a system, but at the same time, it's in total conflict with it, in inexorable conflict. And this is why we have these huge struggles now in relation to libraries, archives, ownership of content. And as we know, I think Stachel was talking about it before we started the meeting about this way in which big content is owned and commodified totally and made extremely expensive, so that now you have hacking, a whole plethora of hacking sites to allow people to access it. So I do think it's more complex and more dialectical than just simply machines and tools. Thank you.
Okay, any response to machines and tools?
I'm sorry, because my internet is a bit unstable. I was on and off. I heard some of the comments, some of it that I just missed. But as I said, first of all, this account is very schematic, like because I wanted to squeeze everything into it. But the other thing is that I assume, like when I say that about concepts as machines or as tools, I don't have anything like an like pragmatic or instrumental idea in my mind. All right. As far as tools are like concerned, first of all, I think that like actually tools are like the tool making, at least, is the first form and the basic form of abstraction, of making making abstractions. So I mean then when I say that, if I say that language is a tool, I do not mean like to instrumentalize it in a weird way. Like it is a means of abstraction. I use the term tool, as a matter of fact, in contrast or in contradistinction to machines, like as a specific type of tool as well, at least. So as I said, when I think about machines, I just follow, Marx, like in Capital, for instance, when he talks about machines as being, like as consist of three parts, like the motive, the shaft, and then the tooling part, and so on and so forth. And like like pointing towards its social form. So it is not the let's say the physical makeup of the machine that is responsible for what it is. The machineness of machine lies in its like in its outside deployment as a specific means within specific social relations with particular forms. So these are the issues I'm trying to like bring together. Like I know it is far from being like matured yet, but still I wanted to present it here.
Great. We'll come to Sigurd next.
Thank you, Siyaves, for a very interesting presentation. I must admit I haven't read your paper. I've also been quite busy, but I'm so very happy to join this collective, this symposium today. And your presentation, it shows that by dealing with Ilyenkov and his philosophy, his thinking, we are dealing with the very basic questions, which is very fascinating. And what I found very interesting in your presentation is how you compare this accumulation, production of knowledge with, and you link it, this similarity with accumulation of money. That's because we are all, I mean, then you also make a very interesting link to society, of course. We are talking Marxism, capitalism. We are all occupied with accumulation of money, we have to admit. We need the money. And we see accumulation of money in the world. And those who succeed in this accumulation of money are very successful and have a very life full of potentiality and so on. While the accumulation and the production of knowledge is another matter, but what you actually suggest, I think, is that the production of knowledge is a value production, and it could possibly be more symmetric, more related to the production of money. That would be in a more so we agree that it's a value production, this production of knowledge. What then, Siyaves? I mean, you mentioned articles. We have the traditional concept of production, accumulation of knowledge. But I think in this regard, it must be very interesting to also think and connect this concept to the technological development. What we are doing right here, we are communicating all over the world through digital platforms and so on. I've been today advertising this seminar back in Norway. I would like more people from this side of politics to take part, because this is so important to be aware of. To listen to Maxim Morozov from Moscow, saluting his friend Sergei in Kiev. I mean, this is so amazing. What about the knowledge production taking part in social medias, Siyaves? Outside the traditional academic frames, which are sort of connected to the production of money, but maybe not in the regard that you could wish. But there are, if you have articles published, I mean, there is a certain connection also to the production or accumulation of money.
Thanks.
So yeah, so that's my question. What about this form of knowledge accumulation and production through the internet, social medias, outside academic frames?
Well, I mean, there are many levels actually to this question in a sense. But I mean, just to put it in a nutshell, I would say something like that. You know, like, I mean, first it's that, you know, like this as I said, I'm trying to address some of the questions that are being discussed at the moment. For instance, that people in the tradition of corporate capitalism, for instance, that they claim that, you know, like that the law of value is being, you know, like imposed externally, let's say, onto the process of knowledge production. I would say that there is some sort of a link, as a matter of fact, between the texture of what we are producing as knowledge and the way that we are appropriating it and the way that we distribute it, okay, that makes it, you know, like a value producing thing, not as something, I mean, upon which value is to be imposed, okay, first of all. I mean, for instance, with regard to this digital, so to say, you know, like my answer would be something like this, that, you know, like that we have access, as a matter of fact, to certain, you know, like I would say, means of production, so to say, freely, which is, you know, very debatable if it is free, all right? I mean, when very simply, it means that, you know, like the cost of, you know, like what we may traditionally refer to as constant capital, you know, as means of production, as being, you know, like diminished to almost zero, all right? And, you know, like, and then whereas, you know, like, and then first is that, and second is that, you know, like these means also, these means of production of knowledge, all right? And they kind of, you know, like the knowledge that is produced in this process is being appropriated as a free gift by capital, all right? So by and large, it doesn't make it radical change in, you know, like in this process. Like, I mean, capital is very fond of, you know, these free gifts. Even, you know, when you read Das Kapital, you know, like volume 1, when there's the part on manufacturing, you know, like there is the sentence that Marx says that, you know, like just by being kept together, this separated individual producers, because this, you know, like togetherness, whatever, this collectivity kind of agitate their animal spirits. There is also an extra that is being produced that nobody measures, and they go as free gifts to capital. So I don't see if this is really radically changing anything. To the contrary, I think it would be another means of, you know, like penetrating into, you know, like into every, I would say, cells and pores of our relations, and make them, you know, subsumed under capital in different ways, not only really and, you know, like in real form, I mean, formally or really, but also in a hybrid way or an ideal way, so to say. Yeah, this is more or less. But one thing about money that I asked, you know, that this is the question that I have this up. You know, a few days ago, there were, I think it was Forbes, that again, you know, they published a list of the richest people in the world. And Elon Musk happened to have, I don't know, 267 billion trillion, I don't know the number. I was thinking like that, wow, he's very fat and rich and this and that. So what about this test? You know, we keep him in an island for 60 days with all his money and leave him by himself, right? I don't know if he can survive. I mean, that's the thing I'm trying to also say, you know, like when I say capital as a social relation is being accumulated, not necessarily money as a form of mediation.
Thank you. We're going to Georgie, and then let's see if anyone in the room will comes along. So Georgie first, then Lars.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for your presentation. I also read some of your papers and they were very interesting for me. I kind of wanted also to continue on the same note. I also found, like, my intuition was that there are some affinities between Ilyenkov and this post-work perspective. I was gonna ask if you think Ilyenkov can be useful in grasping some of the new tendencies, like not new, but the tendencies of dematerialization in political economy, in culture, in arts, etc. For example, the abolition of the gold standard, the immaterial labor that you find in Virno, in Negri, in Lazzarato, and so forth. All these things that kind of point to a certain divorce between production as a material production of material objects and the accumulation of value just on an ideal, like big data, for example, another instance of accumulating capital divorced from material production or material production of objects, even though there is an infrastructure that is let's say the hardware, right? Yeah, so that was what I was going to ask, if you think Ilyenkov and his concept of the ideal can kind of be useful in understanding these developments in the new metamorphosis of capitalism. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I mean, definitely it can be used. I mean, that actually, this is something I'm trying at least to do, or I pretend to do, you know, like so to say. Although I think that, you know, like, Ilyenkov would be like kind of a little bit an alternative, as a matter of fact, to this post-workerist, you know, like cognitive capitalist view of, you know, like view of this transformation, let's say digitalization and so on and so forth, for instance, or digital production of knowledge and so on. You know, like, because the thing is that, you know, like, I think of importance, of course, is this. The emphasis that Ilyenkov makes on ideal and its objectivity and its independence and so on, okay, which also I think follows, it's very kind of truthful to Marx's spirit, you know, like when Marx talks about, you know, production of commodities, you know, say that, you know, they can be, you know, like that this process of production of any commodity can be initiated by needs of stomach as much as by needs of mind, you know, like, so, I mean, like, I think, for instance, Ilyenkov's concept of ideal, as a matter of fact, is a way for a more concrete or determinate understanding of even commodity itself as an ideal entity, or value itself as an ideal entity. So it would be, I would say that, I know it might sound a little bit too you know, bold, but I would say that, you know, like somebody like Virno, or, you know, like other post-workerists, you know, like their a view of value and of commodity and so on is itself very fetishistic, due to lack of this proper understanding of ideality of value and so on, and commodity. And that, you know, like Ilyenkov's concept of ideal, of which he says that, you know, value is one of the greatest examples, it's very, you know, clarifying in understanding really all these transformations that we talk about in capitalism and in process of knowledge production as well.
Thank you. We're going to hear from Lars now. We'll see if we have time for one more.
Okay. You used the term social universe. Can you explain a bit more what you mean by that?
The social universe, I mean, it is like the universe that we live in, you know, like it's, I know Kirill has some problem with my formulation, by the way. He claims that I boil down everything to ideal, you know, like, which to a certain degree I agree, okay, but it doesn't make them idealistic, though. So by social universe, I mean, like, that these are significant in social universe, you know, it's something like this. I mean, independent of our social existence and our relations, okay, nothing is significant. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, like knowledge, for instance, when it comes to knowledge, it is not something like an apple somewhere in the universe that we go and, you know, like grab and bring down, okay? Even when we're talking about like formalizing it, you know, like these processes in forms of, let's say, chemical, you know, like, I don't know, chemical things, you know, like, I had a question for myself, for instance, I just wrote it here. It's like that when you think about wine, you know, like, could it be that, you know, like without, you know, like having wine and want to enjoy something like that, we would come to understanding of, say, you know, like chemical laws about fermentation, this, that, and so on and so forth. I mean, so in a sense, you know, if we didn't have humans, we wouldn't have these type of formalizations, therefore not this type of knowledge and so on and so forth. So these are significant only, that's how I say, in this social universe, just as value is just, you know, this social substance in our social universe. Again, there is this very good example Ilyenkov uses from young Marx, you know, like when he criticizes Kant in his debate against Descartes' ontological proof about, you know, like having thalers in your pocket and imagining having thalers in your pocket. And he says, Marx, you know, there, Ilyenkov cites him, you know, like that if you go with your banknote or whatever into a country that, you know, like there is no concept of banknote, people would laugh at your, you know, like subjective imagination or even your subjective reality, whatever it is. So that's the thing I'm trying to say. I hope I could clarify.
And Andrew as well.
2 points. First point, obviously, Ilyenkov's going to be important for understanding things like material labour, because to do that, you need a good grasp of value theory, say value, use value, money, capital, interest, rent. Those are the categories of political economy, and they're essential to understanding things like immaterial labour. More specific point, there is an interesting paper by Duncan Lindo in 2017-2018 Cambridge Journal of Economics, where he defines a derivative, so which is the core to understanding financialisation and all these other things. And he draws explicitly on Ilyenkov's ideal form notion to do so. So it's a really interesting article. He was taught by Kostas Lapiditsis, who's informed by Ilyenkov's notion of ideal form.
Should I say something? No.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Okay. I barely could make sense because, as I said, my unstable. I'm very sorry about this. The internet.
Oh, did you want Andrew to? Well, yes, he was recommending a particular scholar. Did you catch who he was recommending? Oh yes, sorry. You need to start trying to get into the microphone, Lisa. Maybe if you come a bit closer to the microphone.
Okay, so there were two things. Value theory of political economy is essential to understanding things like immaterial labour. Therefore, of course, Ilyenkov is important and his notion of it is important because it gives an understanding of that. B, a specific article by Duncan Lindo in the Cambridge Journal of Economics, but I think it's really important in understanding these things because what you find the derivative, it's a core to financialisation. And it does so with explicit and continuous reference to Ilyenkov's notion of the revealed form. So it's an explicit example of using Ilyenkov's concept of ideal form in order to understand the curiosities of financialisation, specifically in this case, the derivative. If you understand the derivative, you begin to understand risk management. If you understand risk management, you begin to understand the financialisation of society as a whole. Okay, that's it.
Okay. Derivative. Sorry, Ilyenkov ideal.
Actually, a question.
Risk management. Okay, I see. Okay,
Yeah.
I see.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Any final comments or questions? Thank you very much, then, Siyaves. Thank you for that presentation.